So yeah, I think we left off talking about Paulina's theme here. So yeah, we talked about the Faithful Fashionista, I believe, and how that tied back to the other cathedral themes. We did have a battle theme bonanza. I had to strike while the iron was hot, you know. We had the barb braid, right? Everybody's coming in with their barb, please, right? We had to throw them the battle music. We had to overload their not their sentences, but their senses. Overload them. Yo, what's up, Vesper? Glorious Rainbow, King Canagus. The more it grows on you. Uh-oh, you didn't immediately love all of it, every single note from the very beginning just because I made it. You were obligated to love every single note. No, that's okay. Like, if there are things about the OST that people are like, I don't know why you did this. I hate this part. Do less of this and more of the other thing. Like, I should probably know that, right? I like feedback. It's nice to know who to ban, you know? But anyways. So, we listened to this piece, right? Oops. And even that intro, the reason that it's a 9-bar phrase is because I wanted it to seem like she was like prattling on, right? Like she took that little idea, the ba da 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 da, and she kept going with it, right? She kept extending it, you know? So it was like an added flourish before, you know, the part that comes in that is the variation of the cathedral theme. And then we heard how it varied from how the cathedral conversation was a variation on that. That bum 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 bum. That little background figure is borrowed from the Faithful Fashionista. But I think we already discussed those. I think we were pretty much wrapping up the Faithful Fashionista when we got the barb braid. And we already discussed the ransacked residence. And so that takes us into another cathedral variant. In Tulira, there is a cathedral and it's in a salt mine. And so there's a salt mine dungeon, but then there's also a cathedral inside that dungeon. And so I wrote a piece of dungeon music, but it has a, oh yeah, because it had the bass flute, right? Because we started talking about the bass flute, I think. So maybe we got to this piece, right? Look, my stream would be very boring if there weren't people talking in it, right? If it was just me talking, like that would be lame. I want to constantly be interrupted with questions. I want the back and forth. What's up, Kangaroo? Good afternoon, buddy. So yeah, so the Salt in the Sanctuary, I actually started out writing this piece as a piece for the Nomad. We were trying to come up with shopkeeper music, and at first I had seen pictures of the Nomad, and he reminded me of the shopkeeper from Resident Evil 4. What are you buying? Right? That guy with like the jacket. And he seemed like very kind of, you know, he seemed like a suspicious character, right? And so I had not written the other shop music yet, the what we've already listened to as the shop music. And so I was trying to think of some music for that guy. And Carlos was like, no, he's much friendlier than that. You know, yeah, he kind of looks like the shopkeeper from Resident Evil, but like he's a friendly guy. He's got a doggo, right? And I'm like, oh, he's got a doggo. Can you pet the doggo? And so I presented this to him and he's like, no, you know what I want this for? I want this for the salt mines. So he liked the initial idea that I presented to him, but he's like, no, make this the salt mine music. And so when he said that, I let the B section evolve into a variation of the cathedral theme, and you'll hear it when the choirs come in. And so there's this moment where like everything kind of opens up and you get this big statement of the cathedral music, right? And what I would consider is like a little goosebumps moment, right? So here is the Salt in the Sanctuary. Not purposefully Glorious Rainbow. I don't think I had written the music for Audrey by the time I had written this, but her motif is not the most unique collection of notes. And so it's possible that those intervals ended up in there. But no, that was not purposeful. What's up, Brazos? So yeah, this little bit at the beginning, this little like electronica loop, this. That little piano part, that little icy piano part with the little electronica there, that's basically what I presented to Carlos as an idea for the shopkeeper, for the Nomads music. And so that's what I started with and then turned it into the cathedral theme. Or, you know, into the Salt Dungeon. And then, yeah, right as I was working on this, they released a new an update to the BBC Orchestra to gave me the bass flute, and I'm like, oh, bass flute is perfect for this, right? So yeah, that's Salt in the Sanctuary, and then we have the ancient city of Neva Tulira, which I was told is being like a very old city that had members of the community, or royal family members spanning back generations. It was very austere, right? And so I wanted, again, this piece is kind of representing the two different groups of Tulira. You have the A section, which is like the very proper, like, nose in the air, bit of like military grandeur, right? It's in a Dorian. It's in a C sharp minor, but we have the A sharp. And so I wanted to have that piece of it, right? There was slightly more militaristic, slightly more pomp and circumstance. And then the B side of the piece is sort of representing the more progressive, the youth of the kingdom, the people that are trying to bring about change. And less with the tradition, less with the customs, right? And so it goes into a double time when we get into the B section, and it's a little bit more positive and driving forward, and less like stately. And so yeah, wait until you hear about a double. Oh, I thought you were going to talk about a contrabassoon, but yeah, I'm sure it exists, right? I mean, you can take really any of the woodwind, any of those instruments, and just make an even larger and even smaller version of them, right? So yeah, so this is the ancient city of Neva Tulira. Again, you're going to hear the solo violin, and the melody that is presented here is pervasive through like all of the other Tulira music. So once I point out the main little motif, you're going to hear it in like the rest of the Tulira music in some way, shape, or form. So this is the ancient city of Neva Tulira. And so yeah, that hand percussion I believe is a hand drum, one of those frame drums where you're holding the frame inside and you're like taking the whip to, or the little brush to it, right? So it was, yeah, one of those like frame drums is what was going on there in that B section. And yes, this is like a wintry kingdom, right? And so you of course have to have the sleigh bells in it, right? Yeah, what's up, Soulfish? And so that ba 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 ba, that rhythmic motif da 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 is everywhere in the Tulira music, and you even hear it in yes, thank you. Yes, there is a modulation in the B section as well. Yeah, I wanted to take it someplace new, right? And you even hear it in the B section, right? Ba 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 da ba da da. Ba 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 da ba ba da ba da, right? That dot 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 dot, right? That rhythmic motif is everywhere in the Tulira music, right? It's in the boss themes, it's in the other like the mansion piece and the hidden library, right? And that's that little rhythmic element that I used to tie all the various pieces together. So I'm not sure if I'm asking the kind of question is okay. How much did you get paid and what type of payment was it by commission? No, hey, Abel, I have all of those exact same questions. I cannot, of course, tell you specifically how much money I got paid per piece. I mean, you ultimately have to set your own price, right? What is your time worth? But I was paid by piece. I was essentially contracted employee, where I got paid per piece of music that I wrote. And then from there, we had some various price point breakdowns depending on how much music needed to be written per piece, or how musically dense the music needed to be. No, my arrangement was with Dreams and with Sick, the company that was making the game. So I had a contract with Dreams Incorporated and with Sick. Dreams and Sick, those two companies are the people that made the game, but those two companies are more or less the same group of people, right? And so yeah, so That's how my, without going into any, actual pricing detail, that's sort of how we worked, right? Is that it depended on how long each piece needed to be, and how much material there was getting written, right? Obviously some pieces are much more dense, like a battle theme or something where I'm writing 2D passages, TUTTI 2T passages for the entire orchestra and everything, and you're writing a lot more parts, there's a lot more stuff to do. So it kind of depended on those factors. I don't know if the agreement that we came to, Abel, is any sort of standard across the industry. I have those same questions myself. And that's about the best answer I could give you. Right, exactly, Glorious Rainbow. What's up, Catherine? Good afternoon. And so like I said, yeah, if you hear that ba 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 ba, and you listen for that motif, you will hear it everywhere, right? If we come play the Hidden Library, which is the next dungeon that you visit in the game, you'll hear that motif everywhere as well. Oh, I actually also say with this is where I started introducing a lot of counterpoint, a lot of Baroque style voice leading, right? So you have a lot of like a circle of fifth progressions, right? Where you're either going up or down through the circle of fifths, very quickly, like every beat, right? And that's how I dealt with a lot of the transitional material. And so this is basically just a piece for more or less a string quartet plus like some percussion to kind of give it that wintry feel, right? Because I still wanted it to have that wintry kingdom vibes, and so it's got some vibes, some chimes, some bells, stuff like that, right? So yeah, this is the Hidden Library. Bum ba bum bum bum. Bum ba bum bum bum. It's everywhere. So that part right there just felt hella Baroque to me, right? That dum ba da 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 dum, right? That little turnaround, very very Baroque sounding to me, right? Baroque. And also the harpsichord. I forgot to mention the harpsichord as well. The harpsichord is the boss's instrument of this section. And so you hear the harpsichord here as well, because this is a dungeon where you're kind of spying on what she's been doing to kind of get an idea about what's happening in the town, right? And this is one of the few pieces that follows a more classical format. It's not just A, B, C. We go A, B, C. So we do kind of like a back and forth of the section. So there you go. I misspoke earlier. It actually goes A, B, A, C, where the C is that more legato sustained section, right? That kind of prettier section, which again, that music for the C section, I'm pretty sure is the same music as the Mansion Mystery C section, just slightly varied. And so there's a lot of correlations between the Hidden Library and the Mansion Mystery, because they are both about the bad guy in that chapter. The Mansion Mystery is more of a whodunit vibe, whereas this is more like a dungeon vibe, right? As far as the trying to get ideas into such short pieces, that is just me. Like, I am very OCD, right? Like, I get bored of stuff very quickly. They're like I think one of the better ways to describe it, and actually here, I didn't advance my frame. We listened to Tulira and I forgot to advance it like an idiot. And then this is the library, right? But let me bring something else up here. Because like I can talk about music perhaps visually this way. One second. A lot of people are content to come up with music like this. Whoops. So like say that this rectangle, this rectangle right here is like a 4-bar phrase, right? And somebody will sit there and they'll like let this 4-bar phrase write out a couple of times, right? And it's effectively the same 4-bar phrase. It's just maybe they added an instrument here, you know, like they kind of do like this slow build, or they're willing to just let an entire section repeat. Like say that, you know, this is essentially the same 4 bars as the first 4 bars. It's just maybe there's a slight variation to the melody at the end, or they added an instrument, and then they'll just like repeat it, right? And they'll just let these things, you know, go back to back, right? And they'll just kind of let their music chill out in those 4-bar phrases, right? I am like, my brain is constantly trying to think, by the time I get to this phrase, where am I going from here? How is this phrase? How are these 4 bars or these 8 bars growing into the next 8 bars, right? Are we moving towards something? Are we moving away from something? Are, you know, like, am I going to a big crescendo point and then we're going to fade back down? Are we doing a slow build? And so like when I'm thinking through my stuff, it's very hard for me to just let stuff chill for multiple phrases, right? I get bored and I feel like I'm being lazy, right? Like even if I come up with a groove that I really like, I'm like, I can't just let you sit in this, right? I got to carry you through this thing that I'm writing. And so part of that is just my own natural tendencies. If I like, I could have any of the music that I wrote for this game that's like a minute and a half long. I could have easily made each piece of music 3 to 3.5 minutes long by just expanding some of my phrases and letting you sit in some sections for a little bit longer before moving forward, allowing sections to repeat that I don't have repeat, right? So there's easily enough music for 3.5 minutes per piece. But I put it in a pot, I put it on the stove, and I let it condense until you got like 150 or 1 minute and 30 seconds of like concentrated awesome, right? And so, like I said, part of that is me. Part of that is the style of the style of game that we were putting the music into, you know. But yeah. So yeah, that's the Hidden Library, and we'll come to the Battle of Attrition. We'll actually skip the Battle of Attrition and the Meddling Magician, and because I want you to hear the Hidden Library as it compares to the Mansion Mystery, right? So let's do one more repetition of the Hidden Library, and then I'll hit you with the Mansion Mystery, and you can kind of hear those correlations better, right? It depends on, you know, because the thing is, Glorious Rainbow, like if all I was doing was writing out the sheet music, then long form is fine, right? But unless the music in its final version is a literal cut and paste, right? I have to go in and make all of the stuff work the next time through, right? So if I was going to take that piece and make it a 3-minute piece instead of a 1.5 minutes, right? I still have to write another 1.5 minutes worth of music, even if some of it is is a modification of a copy paste, you know, because I never want my pieces to feel boxy. I always want, and I don't know, this is one of those things where like I see it in my brain and I don't know if I can communicate it well, but sometimes I listen to music and I feel like the music that I'm listening to are all 2x4 Lego bricks, where it's like, here's a 4-bar brick of music, and then here's another 4-bar brick of music, and then here's another 4-bar brick, right? And I listen to some people's music and it just feels like that, right? I want it to feel like those 4-bar bricks have vines and ivy and mutations and one swallowing up part of the other one. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want it to feel like everything is much more organic and growing and flowing and receding into and out of other things, right? And so even if I was to just like double up my sections, I would still want to have those components to it. So it wouldn't be just like a true copy paste, right? And so like, yeah, exactly, Poo Spaghetti. And I touched on this last stream as well. The game had random enemy encounters. That's something that they knew early on from the game, for better or for worse, right? That the game was going to have random enemy encounters, right? A la like Final Fantasy VI, right? And so if I found that as I was doing, because I would periodically play through the game, right, in early versions, I would notice about how long I could get in my dungeon crawling before I'd get an enemy encounter, right? It's sort of like the Walt Disney, how long does it take a person to eat a hot dog before they need to throw the wrapper away, right? And so I would sometimes play the game just to see how much of the music I would hear before you would get another enemy encounter. If you weren't just like chilling out, waiting around, if you were actively moving through the dungeon. And so I always wanted to make sure like that first 30 seconds or so of the music really fit the area that the music was playing for, right? Because sometimes you might only hear 20 or 30 seconds of it before you had another enemy encounter. But that if you hung out, and let the music continue to play out, you'd get a little bit more, right? You'd stay for a second serving, right? And that's part of good melody writing and good hook writing. I mean, you'll see it like, yo, what's up, Owl Puzzle? Also, X, I think you meant to say I'm now going, but the not is funnier, I guess, right? That if you watch like people that do videos on YouTube that talk about writing a catchy melody, or that do analysis of video game music or analysis of music in general, that is how you get an earworm, right? I took that little basic that little basic rhythm, bum, ba bum, 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 and I used it in every which way that I could possibly think to use it, without the music just sounding like bum, ba bum, 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 ba bum, 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 ba bum, 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 ba bum, 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 without just like taking it to extreme, but it persists enough that it creates that cohesion where it makes everything sound like it kind of goes together, even though different, melodies, different chord progressions, different keys, right? And so now if we listen to the Mansion Mystery, you're going to hear that like I didn't write anything new. I just wrote the hidden library, but I just slowed it down and changed a little bit of the instrumentation, a little bit of the flow. And this moment right here, this is a statement of the main Tulira theme. We just heard it in the ancient city of Neva Tulira, right? We have the bum ba bum bum ba bum 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 ba ba bum bum ba da bum bum bum, right? This is the exact same thing. This is that theme right here at the start of this C section. But you can hear how there's a little bit more comedy in this piece, right? There's some big beat fours, and there's some little rips, little glisses up. There's the vibra slap in there. Or I can't make the vibra slap sound. You know it when you hear it. So yeah, there's a little bit of kookiness, right? A little bit of comedy in this piece. But yeah, basically just a string quartet and some percussion, right? Yo, what's up, Tofugawa? So yeah, you can hear out, like I said, between the ancient city of Neva Tulira, the hidden library, and the mansion mystery, those are probably like 80% the same thing, right? Those are like, I don't know, I was trying to think of some sort of genetics comparison to make, right? But they're all the same material, right? And so for we'll get to let me do the Meddling Magician here first. The Meddling Magician is a theme that I wrote for Carrie, which I also do not think ended up in the game, unfortunately. Carrie right here on screen, right? The one on the left there. So Carrie is an antagonist early on in the game, and she becomes a boss later in the game. I'm going to try and keep spoilers mild, but I might say something that's vaguely spoilery. I apologize if nobody wants to hear the spoils. You run into her periodically. She was at the ransacked residence. She's here in the library. She ends up being a boss battle later in the game. And so I wanted to make sure I had a theme for her so that I could reference the material from her theme for the boss battle. Yeah, Poo Spaghetti, that was kind of I think your question speaks to the very nature of the struggle with putting the soundtrack together for this game, because if this was a game that was being developed by Square Enix, by some AAA studio with, max budget and max resources and time, right? You would have a soundtrack that's 150 pieces, right? And those 150 pieces, there's some of those pieces that you might only hear once in the whole game, or maybe once or twice. But like, we couldn't really think that way. Everything that I worked on for this game, I did while working a full-time job that had nothing to do with music writing. And so we had to think about what music would we get the most mileage out of, right? What's the stuff that absolutely needs to go in the game? What are the spots that absolutely need to be filled? Can a piece serve another function somewhere else? Those sorts of questions. And that actually comes up when we get to the Rainbow Lake piece. There's a reason why it's called The Witness at Rainbow Lake and not just the Rainbow Lake. But yeah, it became much more about function, right? Like, where do we need music? More so than like, oh man, if we just had everything that we could ever want and all the time in the world, we would have all this different music for all these different spots. But yes, that's why not every character in the game has a theme, because like, while it would have been cute to say write a theme for Zaz, like, there's not really a spot in the game where, like, if we didn't write a theme for her, there would be music missing, because we had something else that could fill that gap. And so that was kind of the back and forth that we went in orchestrating or in scoring the game, right? So for the Mansion Mystery, or not the Mansion Mystery, excuse me, the Meddling Magician, I knew that Kari was from Cinder, right? Mild spoiler, the part of the game that Kari is from is Cinder. And all of the music in the Cinder area kind of has this jazzy, bluesy kind of swung feel to it. And I had written a piece of music. I think what the Meddling Magician is I had taken a couple swings at writing the Time Empress Waltz. And I took a couple swings at it before I found something that I liked for her. But I had in folder somewhere an older version of the Time Empress Waltz that didn't really sound anything like the finished piece, but was like another idea that I had that I was working on when I was working through the Time Empress music. Because, music like that always vexes you because the character is important in the game. And so you take the most attempts at trying to get the music right because that the character is important. And so you're like, well, maybe the very first idea I come up with is not the greatest idea. Maybe I need to bang around a few ideas before I come up with something that I'm really convinced works, right? So I had a piece that was kind of an in-progress piece that I came back to, and I'm like, oh man, this totally works for Kari's theme. Especially if I did a little something with the B-side. And also, Glorious Rainbow, to your question, at this point, the muted brass had come out. And so I made it kind of like this piano trio sort of thing where it's like piano, acoustic bass, muted brass. It's this kind of like little jazzy ditty that was Kari's theme that later gets used for her boss fight music. And so this is the Meddling Magician. And that gesture, that bum, that was the little rhythmic figure that would come to define her music, that little Scotch snap at the beginning of each bar. Ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-dum. Right? And then in the B section of it, I really leaned into the second eighth note of that groove. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Like I really liked leaning into the and of one on that B side of the theme. What's up, Critter? One thing that really struck me as I was listening to some of these overworld themes in the game itself is how, as fully orchestrated it is, the background music never seems to get in the way of the frequently spoken dialogue. I'm glad that you were of that opinion. I had nothing to do though with getting the music in the game. I only delivered the files and made some suggestions here or there about where I thought we might need music. But no, there was another, I believe his name was actually Jorge. He's credited as Corta. It's like C0RT4 or something like that on Twitter as well. He was the one that did this, that actually put the music in the game and mixed the voices and the dialogue and everything like that. So, I did know that for a piece like this one, the Meddling Magician, that it would likely be played underneath dialogue. And so that informed how I wrote the piece. Because, you don't want something really bombastic if people are trying to talk over it. So like I said, that did come into play, but no, I wasn't the one that actually did any of the mixing of the music, voiceover, sound effects. And I was not the sound effects guy either. It wasn't that Jorge, though. Yeah, it's not this Jorge, unless he wants to take credit for it, and then I won't stop him. All right. So yeah, so let's do a second pass of the Meddling Magician. And like I said, you'll hear how like this use of the drum set and the acoustic bass and this kind of swung feel is all borrowing from those components that I use for all the Cinder music, right? dang it. This mute button is very sensitive. Like, it doesn't always work. Sorry about that. So I was just going to say, if we transition from listening to the Meddling Magician to the Magician's Prestige, which is her battle theme, you'll hear those exact same themes, right? We had the A theme, which is the bum 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 bum. And then we also have the B theme, the bum ba bum ba da 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 da. Right? I'm sorry, I'm not the greatest vocalist. I don't sing on the OST, right? But we have those two themes, right? And it's the same deal here. The A section of this piece is the A theme from the Meddling Magician, and the B section of this piece that goes into the metric modulation is the B theme of the piece, right? But then the B theme of the piece does the same thing that I mentioned from the other boss musics, in that it has interjections of the Cinder theme, which we've not listened to yet, but we'll touch on those when we listen to the Cinder music. And so this music starts out the same way that all the boss fights start out, where you get a statement of the villain's theme, and then a statement of the Cinder theme. And you know what? Even as I'm talking about this, I feel like we shouldn't skip ahead yet, because we've not done any of the other Cinder music. We haven't even done the music for the Tulira boss fight. So let's actually put a pin in this, and we'll come back and we'll reference the Meddling Magician when we get to the end of the Cinder. I don't want to talk too out of sorts here. So I'm going to tease you there. I'm going to tease you with that. We'll come back to it. Because yeah, we have a couple pieces yet to talk about in Tulira. And we've not even talked about the Battle of Attrition. So let me see where we're at here. Yeah, you know what? Actually, let's take a pause here to go back and discuss the Battle of Attrition, which we skipped over. The Battle of Attrition, I wrote 2 extra battle themes, standard like enemy encounter battle themes for the game. And I actually wrote them both relatively late in the development of the game. We had started out with just the one battle theme, and we knew that we were going to do the boss battle themes, but we had some playtesters that were like, hey, we love the battle theme. It might be the greatest battle theme written for a video game in recent history, but all the same, can we get some additional battle music for later in the game, right? And so I had an idea of writing like a trilogy of battle music, right? Three battle themes that all increase in intensity. And so the first battle theme, the Timeless Battle, as I mentioned, is the kind of more upbeat, joyous kind of battle theme. The second battle theme, I wanted to be sort of like the Empire Strikes Back battle theme, that is like we have been beaten down by the enemy, right? We're tired. We've been at this a while, right? Shit's getting real. And so I wrote the theme in a halftime to start, because I wanted it to feel like, you know, you were struggling to keep up at that point, right? Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, to a degree, the battle music was, a 4, 5, 6 trilogy. So let me bring in a piano here. I forgot to do this before stream started. And so whereas the Timeless Battle, you had the melody starting on the root of an E minor and then dropping down to the third. Right? That was our Timeless Battle theme. So I took that idea, right, still based around the E minor chord, and I just moved the starting note up one note in the chord. So rather than starting on E, I started on G. So rather than this, you get, but then I put it in that halftime, and so you get the Battle of Attrition theme as ba da da da, right? The same motion as the Timeless Battle, but halftime, and just moved up one note of that chord, right? And so this is the Timeless Battle. And like I said, I wanted it to sound like you're starting off defeated, and then the B theme, you kind of get your second wind. But by the end of the B theme, like you have just had like an all-out slugfest, and like you are feeling like you are near the end, right? Like you don't have anything left in the tank. And the very final little moment of the Battle of Attrition is another wink at the Time Empress melody. You get a statement of Cris Bell's theme, and then a response to Cris Bell's theme with the Time Empress theme. And so like there's this quiet little moment at the end of the Battle of Attrition before it loops back, where it's Cris Bell call, Time Empress response, right? Before it cuts back to loop again. And so this is the Battle of Attrition. And so, yeah, the music has a much more call and response there, right? Where like you hear the weaker voice call out the melody, and then the low end and all the heavy instruments respond. I wanted it to feel like a slugfest where, you know, there was a weaker punch being thrown and then a much heavier response back, right? And then you heard that little bit at the end that I was talking about, which is this, right? You hear that initial statement of Cris Bell's theme, but then you hear, except it's in a different key. I forget where it modulates to, but it starts out with Cris Bell's theme, but then it morphs into a response from the Time Empress there right at the end. You'll also notice at the very beginning of the piece, you get the original battle theme call, but it's halftime. And so it sounds very defeated there, right? Because it's not nearly as snappy. And you'll also notice the integration of more triplet figures, because the third battle theme is in a triplet time. And so I wanted to start pulling in some of the references there to the triplet feel, plus the triplet rhythm, again, the magic theme of the game where anything that's magical is in a triplet time. And so as you're getting better at the game, as you've developed more spells and you have more magic, more MP moves to use, there's a little bit more of the triplet figures in the battle theme, right? So we'll listen to it this second time through with those other points that I was just making, right? There's that initial battle theme. That moment right there, I'm sorry, we're going to interrupt again. That was another augmented chord right there. That bum, ba, bum, is a big augmented sound because, again, I mentioned it in the last stream that when I want to allude to like the real big bad of the game, right? When I want to make a reference to that final battle, I'm using augmented chords. And so that little moment there, before we cut back into the 8th note groove there, is a little augmented stab there in the 2D. Ah, yes, that's what it was. Okay, I thought I can remember it. Not right off the top of my head. Yo, what's up, Memory Lane? Yes, people have said a couple of nice things. If you need to know something that somebody nice said, you can just do review, or you could say review, and you'll get another one. No, wait, it's supposed to cycle. Give me a different one. There we go. People have said some nice things. It's quite surprising. You know what I liked? I actually read a review. I think I read the IGN review, and it was not as nice. And I mean, about the game overall, like it wasn't one of the better reviews. But it didn't mention anything about the music whatsoever. And I looked in the comments section, and the very top comment was, "You didn't say anything about the music." And I was like, that's right. You could have at least said something nice about the music. So yeah, did you see that too, Ornetta? Yeah. So yeah, that's the Battle of Attrition. That is our Empire of the Battle theme trilogy, right? And so the way that we broke it up was we knew that there was Narim and Tulira was Battle Theme A, and then we had Narim and Clarity was Battle Theme A, Tulira and Cinder was Battle Theme B, and then we had Crystallis and the other endgame content, which was the third battle theme, right? And so that's kind of how we broke up the battle themes across the game. Who from our Discord made the comment? I don't know. It's hard to say. So yeah, that is the Meddling Magician, or the Battle of Attrition. We did the Magician, we did the Mystery. Let's talk about the Seafaring Stiletto. So another trilogy of tunes that we had in the game was I wrote 3 overworld themes. And so we kind of had the same thought about the overworld that we did about the battle themes, and that it would be nice if we had the further you got into the game to have some overworld variants. Yeah, and I get that, Critter. Like in most game reviews, I don't think that the reviewer is under an obligation to talk about the soundtrack. I think that for an RPG game, not that music is not important for all games, right? I'm not like, it doesn't really matter what the type of game is. The soundtrack probably deserves some mention. But I think perhaps it's a little bit more weighted in an RPG just because there is this history of RPGs having good soundtracks and their soundtracks meriting discussion, you know? Right, exactly, Poo Spaghetti. But there were a lot of reviews where, like, if the reviewer had like 10 paragraphs that they wrote, 8 of the paragraphs were just about the story and the gameplay mechanics, and then they had like 1 paragraph that talked about the art and the music, and then a concluding paragraph about whether or not what their overall feelings were. And so like I would always just scroll to the bottom of a review and then scroll up 1 paragraph, and I'm like, yep, that's where they're talking about the music. So like I said, we wrote 3 overworld themes, right? And so the initial overworld theme, right, which we played last time. has that ascending line. The other two overworld themes follow suit. They also, their baseline is a walk up the scale. It's just that for the Seafaring Stiletto, it's based on Paulina's music. And so basically what I did was I took the music for Paulina's theme and the music for the first overworld theme, and I meshed them together, right? And so at one point in the game, you get something from Paulina that allows you to traverse in water. And so I wrote a secondary overworld theme for that, where, like I said, I married those other two themes together, right? So here is the Seafaring Stiletto, which is the second overworld theme of the game. One second, I'm getting a DM in my Discord that I got to respond to. We're gonna let this ride out. All right, sorry, I got some irons in the fire. So yeah, if we listen to the original overworld theme. And then we listen to Paulina's theme. You can kind of hear how that all came to inspire this. So it's pretty much the exact same formatting as the initial overworld theme, and it has that same bump, 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 bump rhythm to it that the first overworld theme does. It's just informed by the harmonies of Paulina's theme and the melody of Paulina's theme rather than the initial overworld theme, while still keeping that same structure from the original overworld theme. And then the third overworld theme follows similar suit, where I'm combining it with the original overworld theme and the dragons theme, which is something that gets written for a cutscene. And so we'll discuss that when we get there. And so that takes us to the Rainbow Lake, which I wrote pretty early on, relatively speaking, but it went through several revisions because everything that I wrote was just not good enough. And so for Rainbow Lake, I wanted a piece that sounded like a whole bunch of different instruments, a whole bunch of different ideas playing simultaneously on top of each other, because, it's a bunch of different lakes, and each lake is a different vision. Each lake is a different, a different color, right? And so what we have is this piano playing this figure, the 16th note figure, which will come to represent JKR as well, because Carlos really loved that 16th note piano figure that starts out Rainbow Lake, and he liked the idea of referencing that theme if we wanted to reference JKR for something. And so there's like a trailer, one of the trailers for Cris Tales, where you see JKR in an alley and he clutches something in his fist, and then he runs out and he has a little battle. And even in that cinematic trailer, you hear this Rainbow Lake music. You hear this motif in that trailer, in that little JKR moment. And so you have the 16th note figure in the piano, but then harp comes in and plays a triplet figure on top of it, an 8th note triplet figure. And so you get this 4/3 noise in the background. But then you also have woodwinds that are playing a melody, and then you have it's not I think it's an oud. I'm trying to remember. It's like a plucked, it might be a plucked dulcimer. I'm trying to remember exactly what instrument that I used. So there's several different melodic ideas that are all kind of playing off of each other and interrupting each other, because I wanted to kind of represent, what we're seeing up here, right? All of these different lakes, all of these different shimmering colors. And then the climax of the A section brings in that sharp 4/3 resolution that I love so much, that I've talked about last stream. This that it's so glorious, right? So you'll hear that in the chorus as sort of the foundation for the melodic idea in the chorus. And so, yeah, this is The Witness at Rainbow Lake. And so this piece, when I initially started out, I tried to have this piece represent both Rainbow Lake and JKR, which was kind of a big ask because Rainbow Lake is all nature and prestige and rippling water, right? And that kind of vibe. But then you have JKR, who's a robot, right, or cyborg, or whatever term android, whatever term we want to use for him, right? And so an earlier version of this had like some electric bass in it and some other instrumentation and like some other like electronica sounds as well. But like it just didn't meld as much as I wanted it to. It just felt just too disjointed. And so I took the bass line and I actually did some Bartok pizzicatos on the basses. So they're plucking hard enough that it's slapping the fretboard. And so it's giving that kind of click clack sound. And then you also have that I think it's it might just be a shamisen that's playing as well, that is giving that kind of plucked, almost like marionette doll kind of sound to it, which I also thought sounded a little robotic, a little JKR in the context of this piece. And so that's really how this came together, was like, how can I create this kind of wash of color, of sound between all of these different bits of the ensemble that are kind of mimicking these different bodies of water? And then how can I like somehow put JKR on top of it and make it still work, right? And then also it's a dungeon, right, where you're fighting enemies. And so the B side is a little bit more intense, to kind of reference the fact that this is also an area where you're fighting bad guys, right? And so that's how all of those things kind of coalesced into what we have here. Why am I getting clicks? All right, one second. Let me restart my my audio engine here and restart Spotify and see if those go away. I don't know why I'm suddenly getting little pops here. One of the things that'll keep you coming back to this is the variety of textures. Yes, that was something that I was really happy to be able to do on here, was that I felt like in a way, since this was really, my first big release, that I kind of treated this OST as like my thesis project to kind of prove that I could do a little bit of everything, right? There's some rock orchestra stuff on here. There's some jazz stuff. There's some very sweet lyrical orchestral stuff. There's some gritty stuff. There's some kind of more electronica, like not super electronic, but like a little bit more synthy kind of stuff, like with the sewer music. And so it kind of gave me an opportunity to do a little bit of everything and prove that, I could do a little bit of everything, right? So yeah, I really like, what was the point of writing another piece if it was going to sound exactly like something that we had already, right? So yeah, hi Eleanor. So yeah, that was The Witness at Rainbow Lake. And then that takes us to the last piece for the Kingdom of Tulira, which is the boss music, right? And so this is the boss music for Rallis, which, like I said, her main instrument is, or her feature instrument is the harpsichord. And again, we're maintaining that Baroque aesthetic. And so same sort of deal here, right? You're going to hear Rallis's theme pitted against the theme for the Town of Neva Tulira. And it's going to be very much in a Baroque style of voice leading and counterpoint. While kind of, it has like a very kind of like The Crow's Murder. Yes, I like this one. And it also kind of has a very dancey vibe to it. In the Discord, as we were working on this section of the game, a member of the project team pinged me, or put a note in the music channel and was like, hey, I really like this piece of music. And he just like put some piece from some video game. I don't remember what it was now, but it was just kind of like this dancey Euro pop kind of sounding tune. And he's like, I really like this. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a boss theme like this? And I was like, I think I might be able to make something like that work for the Rallis boss fight. And so that's what I came up with. And so, like I said, it's kind of like a concerto for harpsichord. And yeah, it's got a little dancey groove to it. And you'll hear that Tulira rhythm that I talked about earlier persist through here as well. But it's got a dotted eighth note rhythm on the back half of the measure that kind of gives it that back end groove that the piece has. And then, like I said, it's when I need to go fast or transition a section, I cycle through the circle of fifths, really fast quarter note transitions through the circle of fifths to get us to another key area for another phrase. And I just kind of played around with those ideas, and we ended up with The Crow's Murder. And so that big moment right there, that's where the villain's theme clashes up against the Narim theme, or not the Narim theme, the Neva Tulira theme. You get that ba-bum, ba-bum, bum-bum, ba-da-da-da, right? That's a big statement of the Tulira theme, and that's why you get the guitar coming in with that. And that's like the big hero theme punch back at the villain theme, where we just did a transition through that circle of fifths, as we're kind of spiraling, and then we land at this big statement of the hero theme. There's a little bit of woodblock here, a little Time Empress reference. Yo, what's up, Chef Boy Eric? Enjoy your lurk. And you'll notice that final turnaround back to the start is a 3-bar phrase instead of a 4-bar phrase. And so I cut 1 bar off to really drive us back to the beginning. And it's almost unexpected because you're thinking that last transition is going to be a 4-bar phrase. And then you're flung back to the start 1 bar early. And something else you'll notice, which persists in literally every boss theme, the default boss battle and all of the other battle themes, at some point there is a statement of this, of that fifth, that perfect fifth down a half step to the tritone. And you hear it here as well, right? As we come back to the recap. And so I'm going to back it up a little bit. The transition back to the top, which is only 3 bars. And then you're going to hear that, that statement of the boss theme, right? This as a variation here before the main melody of the A section starts. So yeah, that is The Crow's Murder. Yeah, I don't think we have anything else to say about that one. That takes us out of Tulira and into Cinder. And so, like I said, Cinder was the town of the game that I wanted to feel the most kind of Zoso, the most kind of jazzy, like that kind of music that you hear in JRPGs when like they want to indicate that like you're in a back alley with some punk kids, you know, that kind of jazzy, sleazy punk music, right? That you hear in JRPG music. But the town of Cinder, you know, still had to sound like a town with pleasant people in it. And so for the town of Cinder, I ended up doing something where I was like, it's a town in a volcano. What's a video game? What's a music term that video gamers know that they associate with fire? And I thought bolero, right? Zelda Bolero of Fire, right? A bolero is a dance move, is a dance style. Cinder is a town inside of a volcano. Exactly. It's the engineering. It's quite a feat of engineering. And so I made a little bolero, right? Ravel's Bolero, pretty well known piece of orchestra music, even among people that are not big orchestra folks. The Bolero, you've probably all heard it before. Trying to get the bigger section of it. So yeah, I don't know if that little melody is familiar to anyone in chat. That bum ba da 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 dum ba da dum with that of the snare drum. Like the snare drum part for this is like a 1-bar phrase, and then it just says repeat until you're ready to roll over and die, right? And so that's what we did for the Town of Cinder. Is I made a little bolero. But it's still got a little bit of a creepiness to it, a little bit of ominous to it. It's not swung. It's like a 16th note swing and not really like a triplet swing. But that's kind of what I was looking for here is kind of take that bolero feel and add some metal, some clangy sounds, right? It's a lot of, heavy instruments, making this town function in a volcano. But it still had to, sound like town music, right? And so that's where we got the Town of Cinder here. So we can hear some of the sounds that came to define this area of the game. The castanets and the snare drum, right? That kind of Spanish flamenco feel to it, right? I had tried to use castanets somewhere else in the soundtrack, and they were like, no, we like the piece, no castanets. And I'm like, fine, I'll take out the castanets. And then I just put them in a different part of the soundtrack. Because I'm like, we're getting castanets in here, dang it. It's happening. Just let it happen. But then we also hear the Santour. Oh, you know what? Screw Henry Mancini for forever ruining chromatic movement in music, right? Because you put a little chromaticism in a piece and suddenly everybody's like, is the Pink Panther here? Curse you. And so yeah, we have the Santour, which is that hammered dulcimer sound that's playing the melody there at the beginning and is rolling on those strings, which gets used elsewhere. Glorious Rainbow, to your point that you asked in the Discord, in the Forgotten Cathedral that we'll come to here in a second. That kind of defined the sound of Cinder, right? We have some anvils in the background. We got the castanets. We have a lap guitar, like a steel guitar, but it's a lap guitar. Is strumming out some chords there in the B section. That kind of, steel plucked sound for this area. And so this piece gave me the foundations that I built the couple of other pieces on for this area. So let's do a final listen and we'll move on. And here we also hear the basic rhythmic idea that's going to persist through the rest of the Cinder music as well. This that I just move around. It's just 3-5-1 of a minor triad. But then I move it all over the place. That little motif just gets moved around, and you heard it all in this piece, right? And so that little motif becomes the defining characteristic of the defining rhythmic element of the Cinder music, right? And we'll hear it in Cineza, we'll hear it in the Fire and the Forge, right? And so yeah, for Cineza, the Remains of Cineza, and I don't think I'm saying I don't remember how they say it in the game now, but for this next piece. This is a dungeon where it used to be a town, but it's become overrun and dilapidated, and the people who live there are sick. And one of your missions in the game is to find a cure for what ails them. And so this is where it starts to get a little grittier, where we get a little bit more swung feel, and we get a little bit more, we lean in a little bit more to the metallic hammered sounds. And I don't know, people hear this and they think shuffle slam, and I'll take that, as a compliment. And it's also a little bit more sparse, particularly the B theme, is pretty sparse, particularly for something that I wrote for this. Little introduction of the xylophone as well here, to kind of create that kind of sparse, brittle texture. And we also put some drum set in this one, which is something that the drums had more or less been reserved for battle themes. But there are a couple pieces in Cinder that use the drum set because it fit that jazzy, bluesy kind of aesthetic that I was going for as well. And so I let us lean into it a bit for the Cinder pieces. And so here is the Remains of Cinder. I meant the Remains of Cineza. I can remember stuff, chat. I can remember. I just gotta pause there. I love that moment. That I love that little moment where like that melody creeps in and overtakes what's going on. There's that motif again, right? Da 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 da. Yeah, I might have worked on this. This was one of those pieces where it was like, well, I'll say in a second. So yeah, this was a piece that I had started working on, and then I got an email that we were like, oh hey, or I got a ping in the Discord. It's like, hey, we're presenting this in front of some people the next day or something. And so like I was working to crank this one out because suddenly we had a deadline where we wanted to present to an internal group, and we wanted to make sure that this area of the game had music. And so yeah, I'm pretty sure I worked on this at least once on stream. But yeah, and the open hi-hat there also kind of sounded like a steam valve, like a tss of like, you know, steam being shot out of a pipe, right? And so that was another reason why I liked the drum set here, is because that open hi-hat kind of gave that kind of whistly steam release kind of sound, which kind of was like a sound effect in the music, which I liked. And then that took us to the Fire in the Forge, which I did also work on stream, and it's one of the only pieces, I think it's the only piece in the game that's not battle music that has electric guitar in it. And that's just because we're in the middle of the forge, right? You have, you know, fire everywhere, big industrial equipment, clanging sounds, right? And this where I really lean into that stank, right? That we kind of allude to in the Cineza piece. And there's even like a whistle at the very end of the B section as we're looping back to the start of the A section. You can hear a faint whistle in the background, like a work whistle. It's almost as if it's like the end of day shift, like you're getting the final climax of the piece of music, and then you hear this work whistle, which is like telling you, all right, everyone, we're done for the day, pack it up, let's go home, you know? And so yeah, this was the Fire in the Forge, and like I said, I really felt like it needed electric guitar to kind of drive the emotion of the area. But it doesn't play throughout the whole piece because I didn't want it to be too heavy. But yeah, otherwise, like I said, you're going to hear that bum, ba bum, ba bum, right? You're going to hear that same lick persist throughout this piece. And yeah, otherwise, it's just a little funky triplet groove with some electric guitar. And like I said, we hear some stuff that a little bit of chromaticism, a little bit of Cursed Pink Panther here from time to time, and just kind of the sound of loud clanging instruments, right? Here is the Fire in the Forge. Whoops. So yeah, and you hear that that whistle right at the end of that phrase. The B theme, even though it's not going bum ba bum ba bum, it's still going ba da da. Right, the melody is still following that interval pattern, just without the extra articulations there. But it's still basically that same theme, right? That same Cinder theme that I developed a couple pieces ago. Oh, and then I skipped a piece. This was another piece that I wrote that I don't think made it in the game. This was just something I noticed that we kept coming back to this stronghold at a couple points throughout the game, and so I thought maybe it would be nice to have something to play other than the Cinder music for this. And so this was just this was something that I think I originally tried as an idea for Kari's theme, but then it wasn't enough music for Kari's theme. But I liked the mood that the music set with like the bass clarinet and the bassoon. It kind of had a low swagger to it. And I thought it would work well here for the stronghold or the concealed castle. And so, like I said, this was just a little ditty. I didn't spend a ton of time working on this one. It's just kind of a simple little idea, but it just provided a different kind of mood, a different atmosphere for this castle. What's up, nobody? Again, the return of those castanets, the wood block, this kind of surly, drunk clarinet line. Are you upset that I didn't give the trombone the part? It was probably honestly something where I just didn't spend as much time orchestrating this piece as the others. I do have an affinity for French horn, and I think it depends kind of on the timbre that I'm looking for. If I want something with a little bit more growl in it, I will usually throw it to the trombones. And I know that, you can have a trombone play softer, or a horn play more aggressive, and you can get those different timbres. But it was probably something where I laid it down in the horns, and then I liked the way that it sounded, and so I didn't sit there and try and be like, oh well, what if I gave the trombones this instead? But if this ever gets played by a live symphony orchestra, I'll throw the trombonist a bone. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like the smooth feel of the horn there, but I suppose it could have been given to the trombone. But like I said, I don't think that piece ended up making it in the game. I've watched some streamers play it. I've watched them get to this area. I don't think that music ended up in game. And then the last piece for Cinder that we have is the Forgotten Cathedral. I wrote cathedral music for every cathedral that we visit in the game. This one you don't spend a lot of time in. It's just kind of like a pass-through area before you encounter a boss fight, and so you don't hear it. It is in the game, but you really only visit this cathedral the one time, and so it didn't need a lot. But all the same, this cathedral in the game is one that the town people kind of forgot existed, right? It's abandoned. And so when you get there, it's not like you have parishioners coming and like you know, praying here. And so it was a Forgotten Cathedral. And so, considering the kind of bluesy, jazzy nature of the music for this area, I kind of just, I think this is one piece where I actually like played out the piano, like recorded myself playing the piano and left some of the imperfections of my playing in. And I didn't like super quantize it or anything like that. But it's got the piano, it's got an acoustic bass, and it's got the that Santor, that hammered dulcimer sound from the Cinder piece, and so yeah, it has all of the instrumentation from Cinder, but then the cathedral theme, and it sounds very kind of defeated and fading away because everyone kind of forgot this cathedral existed, right? So this was another piece that, again, did not take hours and weeks to compose. This was something that I kind of threw together, maybe worked on a day or two, and liked the way that it sounded, and it didn't really need to be much more than this, right? This is the Forgotten Cathedral. And so, like, instead of the bells or the chimes, we have the vibraphone, a little jazzier sound, right? Little darker tone. But if we stop to analyze it, right? Okay, I moved it to the key of A minor because a lot of the other music in this town is in A minor. But we have this. Oops. Right? That. Let me give you some pedal here. Right? And so it's that same cathedral melody, right? If we come back and we play Cathedral of the Mothers. Oh wait, I guess it's just, we can actually just start from the beginning. Sorry about all of that. Just that. Oops. Oh my goodness, hands. Right? And we get that, but it's right? It's that same melody line. It's just kind of, it's gotten a little dirtier, right? And then the other instruments here are really just like color, right? That Santor, those rolls for color, the vibes to kind of bring out that melody. With the walking bass line. But yeah, this was this shows you. I mean, look at this. It's one of Glorious Rainbow's favorite pieces on the track, or on the OST, right? But it shows you what you can do when you've given yourself some thematic material to work with, right? I didn't come up with anything new for this, really, right? At the point that I had written this, I already had a cathedral theme. I already knew what the instrument sounds were for the Town of Cinder, right? I had made some instrument choices. I had made some stylistic choices, right? And then it just became about, okay, how do I take this existing theme and stylize it for the Town of Cinder, right? And so, you know, you just you take in what you know about the piece, or what you know about the place. It's forgotten, it's abandoned, it's dirty, it's old, right? But it still has that jazzy kind of influence to it. And so, yeah, you just take that theme and you see how you work it in that style. And yeah, I think I spent, you know, obviously not 2 full days, but I think I spent like 2 sessions working on that piece before it was done, because it didn't really need anything more than that. And that's actually something that I struggle with as a composer. I feel like if there's not a million instruments playing, nice, thank you, Glorious Rainbow. I feel like there's that insecurity in me, and you hear it in the soundtrack for sure. If I was to lay some criticism at my own feet, right? Is that particularly because I was using all VST libraries and there were no live recorded instruments on the soundtrack, and I knew that, right? I was aware of it. I felt like I had to hide that by having a million things playing all at once, right? So like a lot of the music for this OST is rather dense. There are very few points where I only have like 2 or 3 instruments playing, and I think I would have caused myself a little bit less headache if I had allowed some pieces to be a little bit more sparse and just allowed them to sit bare in their orchestration. But I felt like it was too exposed, right? That there wasn't enough going on, that it was going to be seen for, you know, the fraudulent VST piece that it was, right? So I tried to hide that with more orchestration. And so that's something like me personally that I want to work on for the next project, you know? Because yeah, like it, like the Sunken Cathedral that we listened, or the Concealed Castle, it was previously called the Sunken Stronghold, and that's why I keep goofing it. But that Concealed Castle piece, I spent a lot of time just finessing that clarinet solo to make it sound good, right? Like I did, like those notes are not all placed on bar lines, right? To get the swagger that I was looking for out of that clarinet line, I had to massage it a lot. This part coming up here, 1 second. For this line, just that little bit right there, I probably spent like 45 minutes to an hour just shifting note values around very slightly just to get the right kind of swagger. I had a friend of mine in college that was a clarinet player. He played with me on my senior recital, and I could just kind of imagine him like holding his clarinet going, you know, kind of like, you know, grooving out as he's sitting there playing his clarinet and everything. And like, but I didn't just like write the music out the way that you'd write it out on sheet music and be like, okay, computer, now you're going to play it perfectly, right? Right. Yeah, it's so hard to sound like a human when you program things, right? And so that's why there's not a lot of pieces on this soundtrack that have that sparser orchestration, was because despite my best efforts, it never felt human enough for me, right? And so you know, regardless of how much you tweak the dials or you insert automation, like and it's one of those things where it's a shortcoming on my end, right? Because the average listener doesn't notice those things that bother me. And that's still something that I struggle with now, is that like when I listen to the soundtrack, I still see the forest for the trees, right? It's hard for me to hear it as a finished product, and not as, oh, well, I wish I could have done this section better. Oh, I don't like the mix in this section, right? There are still those components that, like, to be able to just write out something like this as a rough sketch for what my expectations of the piece are, and then actually take it to a concert hall and have a real orchestra play it. Like, oh my goodness, that's the dream, right? That would be the dream. I need somebody to be like, hey, I like what you did here. I want you to do it for my game, but I want to pay you way more money, and I want to, hire you on full time or whatever, and let it be something you do as your job and not something that you do staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning on a weeknight, and you got to get up for work the next morning, but also you have to get this piece of music done. Would I consider expanding a few of my more favorable pieces? I would consider it, yes. Like right now, all of this is kind of thrown. Let's put it this way, Glorious Rainbow. I have a number of ideas for things that I would want to do musically on stream. And one of those things would be like turning a piece, like say the Timeless Battle or something, into a more long form piece. But like that takes time, and I only stream a couple of times a week, and so like that's something that I would love to do if I was able to transition these next couple of months. If I was somehow able to transition this into a full-time job where I could just stream during the day 5 days a week working on music, whether that's just fun stuff, whether that's stuff for a project, and all of the stuff that I'm doing in the evenings and weekends is stuff that I'm doing for a 9 to 5, then yes, absolutely. I am actually working on this. 1 second. I've actually been working on this over the weekend. I suppose now is as good a time to share it as any. I've been working on this. This is a reduction of the Timeless Battle. So this is basically, because I've said in interviews that the idea with the music for Cris Tales was that you could distill it into a piece for Super Nintendo and it would translate, right? That even though I'm writing for the full orchestra, that any of the pieces that I wrote for the soundtrack could be distilled down into 8 monophonic channels, which were the limitations for the Super Nintendo a sound card, sound chip, and that the piece would still work, right? So I went into the Timeless Battle, and this is actually the reduction. It's not, I don't have everything labeled out, but these are like all of the core pieces that make the piece work, and all fit to 8 channels. And yes, exactly. And so the reason that I'm doing this is in part so that I just have all of the main ideas in a single file that I can easily look at without pulling up the entire program, right? But now if I wanted to do an SMW port, if I wanted to make a Mario Maker level, right? If I wanted to, do a long form version of the piece, right? I have the nuts and bolts of it all right here. And so I might even just upload this to YouTube, and just like play the actual track over the top of it, but have it have this sheet music move for the video, so that people can listen to the Timeless Battle as it exists in game, but that they can see kind of a reduction of the music to see, so like if somebody wanted to do their own cover, right? Or if somebody wanted to make a version of this, right? I always hate having to listen to a piece of somebody's music and try to figure it all out by ear. Yeah, what's up? Oh my goodness, I can't remember now. Is it QC? Hello, hi. And so, yeah, so, maybe there's somebody out there that wants to do their own cover. I got it right. Oh, look at me go. Welcome in. So if somebody wanted to do their own cover, yeah, transcription is a bit of work, right? A pain in the butt. And I already have it all, right? And so, again, it's not like laid out perfectly or anything, but it is all the components, and I can play it for you. It doesn't sound great because it's all just pianos. Let me see here. What is this? What does this play out of? So that's as much of it as I've gotten done so far, but we're getting pretty close to the end. And so like I said, it doesn't sound great to listen to it on its own, but it's got all the components to it, right? And so like if somebody wanted to play the guitar solo, there's the notes of the guitar solo, right? And so yeah, I was just laying this out so that I had it, so that I could reference it, so that maybe I could do some videos that just give you this, right? Because like I said, if somebody wants to cover my stuff, I think that would be sick to see, right? But I want to make sure they have all the right notes. And so here it is, right? So yeah, so I've been working on that. So yes, hopefully I can transition that into an SMW port or into a Mario Maker level. It does let you, it will import MIDI data. And it will do scan MIDIs if that's what you're asking for, or scan like PDFs. So anyways, so yep, I am working on that for y'all. All right, where were we? So we played the Forgotten Cathedral. Oh yeah, so that takes us to the Magician's Prestige, right? Which we alluded to earlier, right? So let's go back and let's listen to Kari's theme. I have it up here because you run into her before you get to Cinder, so I tried to do it chronologically a bit. So this is Kari's theme. Let's listen to that, the Meddling Magician, so that we then can hear those melodies, right, in the context of her boss theme. Okay, so now going into the boss fight, hearing the... I know what API is, but I'm still not 100% sure. I know what you're asking me, Glorious Rainbow, but do feel free to expouse on it. I could take the file that I have in FL Studio and quantify everything so nothing's off the bar, and then export that, but it almost seemed quicker to just, you know, I'm familiar enough with my pieces and I can quickly put in the notes with the piano, and so like it hasn't taken me that long to get as much of it done. And I think that might actually be how I work on pieces moving forward, is to kind of start with the sheet music just so I have it back to reference. And kind of start with the reduced score. Plus, I just love the way that sheet music looks. I love the look of it, right? Like, this in itself is art to me. I just love seeing sheet music with the dynamic markings. Like, there's no like phrase lines here or anything, but like, I don't know. There's something just pretty about looking at sheet music. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but like, I just love the look of clean sheet music. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm familiar with the term API, but like within the context of Muse score, like, I don't know if you're talking about like importing MIDI, importing PDFs, you know? Yeah, exactly. And like with this, the thing that I love about this is that it's like a code that like you can give this to a musician, a professional musician, and they can look at it, they can see the phrasing, and they can tell like, oh, I need to push forward a little bit here, right? Like these 3 notes, right? This isn't ba ba ba, this is ba ba ba, ba ba ba, right? Right. So ba da da da, ba ba ba, ba da 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 da, ba da da da, ba ba ba, right? These 3 notes aren't just da da da, right? There's a movement to them, but like a professional musician would know that to like push through those 3 notes without you telling them every time, right? They would understand the groove, you know. There's that understanding where they can look at that sheet music and they can understand the intent of it without throwing in every single dynamic marking and, you know, articulation under the sun. Oh, I see what you're saying, Glorious Rainbow. Well, hey man, feel free to you know, give me, you know, slide into my DMs. We're trying to work on a plugin for Muse score that will convert to text. That's kind of fallen off the plate with the release of Cris Tales and everything. And so there's a channel in the Discord called Solving the Muses Score, where we're trying to do some stuff with Muse score right now. But like, if that's something that, you know, tickles your funny bone and you like doing that sort of stuff, you know, yeah, I'd be willing to chat with you about it. You'd imagine the notation software would have trouble interpreting some of the more nuanced musical phrases from MIDI. Yeah, that's the thing, is that like in MIDI, sometimes you have to offset something from the bar line, right? You know, like if you look at some of my pieces, like notes are fudged over left and right. And so that's why I said to like import into notation, you would almost have to like quantify everything so it's snapped exactly to the beat, right? So anyways, so now we've heard, right, the Meddling Magician theme, the oops. Right? We have that theme, and then we have the theme from Cinder, and let's see if they play nice with each other or not in the Magician's Prestige, the boss theme for the Cinder chapter of the game. Desi got partnered? Whoa! So one of the things that I wanted to challenge myself on with this piece, with Battle of, sure, fair enough, is I wanted to try and write a boss theme that wasn't super fast. I had been writing a lot of fast battle themes, and I was like, can I write a bumping battle theme that is not super fast, right? And almost immediately I came up with that ostinato figure that you hear in the beginning, that bum 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 in the cellos. And you hear it in the piano as well, that dun 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 dun. I came up with that little ostinato figure and I really liked it. And then I thought about the idea, like that kind of almost like a movie trailer, that bum dun 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 bum 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 bum. You know, like just those big hits on beat one, right? But yeah, and then you have that dun 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 bum 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 bum, and like the little jazzy theme that I wrote fit really well with that style, right? Part of me wonders if there's a version of the song that has lyrics. It does sound, yeah, and that's the thing with writing a good melody line is that you could easily put lyrics to it, right? Because it has that sing-songy quality to it. It's really nice that the theme moves and drives without being fast or overly dependent. Yeah, exactly. Like it works on its own, right? And so, yeah, so the A section started out, but then I took like 4 or 5 swings. Like I tried several variations to try and get to a B section, and I didn't really like any of them. I had spent so much time working on the A section that like I couldn't find my way out of the A section and into the B section. And I thought a metric modulation would be cool because the boss is a magician and she switches sides of the screen and she, has magic, right? And so the idea of a metric modulation seemed to fit, but I tried a couple different metric modulations and none of them really worked out. Sometimes the best B section is the A section though, huh? Yeah, sometimes. And so I might have listened to Magus's theme from Chrono Trigger because what's not to love about Magus's theme. And that dun 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 dun, that pulse of Magus's theme in the 6/8 section, I was like, ooh, I think something like that would work, right? And then when I slammed that metric modulation up against it with that dun 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 kind of groove, like everything snapped together, right? And I had purposefully left the drum set out of the A theme, right? So all of the percussion in the A theme is all just orchestra percussion. And then the drum set comes in and heralds in the B section. It's the catalyst for the metric modulation. And like I said, and I really like that A, B of it, like that phase shift, right? And kind of thinking about the Magus fight where like he changes his style, like he goes from lightning to dark damage to ice damage, right? And so the idea of having the music have like a phase shift in it where suddenly like everything about the piece is different and yet the same was very alluring to me, right? And in that B section as well, we get the call, that boss theme call that I've talked about, right? You hear it at the start of the B section. There's a little like intro segment to that B section before the B theme melody comes in, and you hear that boss theme, that boss motif, and then in the final hurrah of the B section, we hear that bum ba 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 bum dun 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 dun, right? In the trumpets, you hear this brass fanfare. And that fanfare is the Cinder fanfare, the dun 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 bum ba bum ba dum ba dum, right? That minor triad. And so I tried to create some interplay in that final bit of the B section where you have the dun 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 ba da 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 dun ba dun 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 dun. You have that. You have Kari's B theme, the dun 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 bum ba bum ba bum ba 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 bum. Like that town theme is battling back against it, and again persisting that same notion of pitting the villain theme against the town theme motif, right? It's the town fighting back against the evil, right? And so now, in context of all of that, let's listen to it the second time through. Give it to us, drums. A drummer did write this, yes. And then you hear how the downbeats, the 3/4 downbeats, the chun 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 chun, it like rips you right out of that 6/8 section, right? And so yeah, once I figured out that chun 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 chun, once I got that groove for that 6/8 time, the melody, Kari's B theme fit right over it. It all kind of came together. And I can tell you, Glorious Rainbow, that there is not a single piece, not one piece in this soundtrack that I don't think would benefit from a better mix. I am not an audio engineer. I am a pen and paper composer. When I write music, I want to write music like this, right? I want to write the music like this and then take it to an orchestra and have them play it, right? I am very much behind the 8 ball on all things audio digital, right? And so, yeah, there is not a single piece in this entire OST that I don't think could have better benefited from a second set of ears, a mixing engineer, a mastering engineer, somebody other than me touching it. But like, I was it. Like, the piece of music started with me, it ended with me. For better or for worse, everything that exists in the OST is because of my knowledge or lack thereof, right? And so, like, it's all stuff, you know, everything about this was a learning experience, right? And so, you know, hopefully I get another soundtrack under my belt and I go back to this and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this loser did things this way, right? But that's the thing, you know, that's just like, it's no different than, you know, George Lucas saying that he really wanted like giant walking lizards in the back of, you know, Mos Eisley, you know, but he couldn't do it in Star Wars. And so in the original Star Wars. And so he re-released it in the 90s, right? Like, there's always things that you wish you knew, that you wish you had time for, right? And so, right. So, you know, we'll see. I don't know. Yep, guys. Everybody is clamoring at my door right now. I am battling people back with a stick. In fact, that Archie guy in chat, he wants to make me famous. I've gotten 2 requests like that just since this stream started, where somebody has come in here and been like, hey, you want to be famous? Hit me up. I'll help you out, right? So like, yeah, I have people literally knocking down my door in the middle of stream. So yeah, so that is the Magician's Prestige. And so the area of the game, that we go to next is Crystallis, which is like the mecca of magic and power in the game, right? Like it's where all the magical stuff is happening, right? It's a giant crystalline city, right? It's gorgeous looking. But it's under attack. And when George Lucas might be a bad example to point. No, but that's what I'm saying, Jake. Right? That's like what I'm saying right now is that I have sympathy for the devil. I know what it's like to be forced under a deadline and go, we don't care if you wish it could be better. We don't care if you had more time. We don't care if you could take another pass at it. Like, it has to be done now. Art is never finished, only abandoned, right? And so, like, I'm saying I have sympathy for George Lucas, right? Because I know what it's like to have to turn over to a piece, to have to say, nope, this is done. You can't work on this anymore, but want to work on it more, want to have an excuse to go back and tweak it and do better and change things. I'm just saying, like it was there was a moment, right? with the game, where I had to like be providing final sign off on pieces, and I had to be sending them stuff going, okay, I'm never going to touch this thing ever again, right? Like, I'm handing this piece over. This is what's going in the game. I can't fudge with it anymore. You know, I can't take another pass at the mix. I can't, you know, make another tweak, right? Like, it's done. It's done. It's done. And like, that was very difficult for me. Well, not just Holst, Korngold as well. There's a little bit of Ray Vaughan Williams in there too. A lot of great early 20th century English composers. Yeah. Don't discredit the other influences. Don't get me wrong, you desire to always tweak the work, shows admirable dedication. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that like, it's one of those things where like, I'm worried about a brushstroke that nobody even notices, right? But it's all that I can see, right? And that's what I mean when I say that I can only see the forest for the trees. I can't look back at the finished product and be like, yep, that works. And so what I started doing actually pretty late in the pretty late in the process of making the soundtrack was that I would try to listen to music that I really loved, whether that was like video game music, whether that was pop music. It didn't matter if it was something by Nobuo Uematsu. It didn't matter if it was something by Sting, right? Like, I was just found myself listening to music, and I was like, ooh, if I was mixing this, that snare drum's a little bit too loud. That snare drum's too loud in the mix. Oh, I can't really hear the low strings here. Oh, wow, this synth part is really kind of like, I tried to listen to other people's music that I idealized, and I tried to be as hypercritical to it as I was being to my own music, right? To see like, if I wasn't like just listening to their music the way that I, a novice, would be listening to the music of a professional, and I tried to instead think about it as like that hypercritical focus that I give my own stuff. And that kind of helped me get through some of the self-doubt that I had, was to go, look, you could tear apart anybody's piece of music. There's no capital C one correct way to mix something. But like, it did kind of bother me that I would occasionally listen to my stuff and be like, it doesn't sound like it's mixed the same. It doesn't sound like it's balanced the same as like the rest of the RPG world at large, right? And I didn't know how much of that was because I approach orchestration differently, or because there was something that I was deficient at, something that I did not know how to do with regards to the audio process that I just needed to get better at, right? I've been paid for my work. I am a professional, right? Yes, just start working on the remastered for the 10-year anniversary. Well, if I started now, I would probably be done with it in 10 years, you know? So anyways, we get to Crystalis, right? This place. And so, like I said, we already had a cathedral theme, right? Oops. Right? And so, if this is like the mecca of magic in the game, my thought with this was, and the thing that I knew when, because I had not seen a lot of artwork for it yet, but the thing that I knew was that it was like Kingdom of Magic, and it was under attack, right? That by the time we get there, it's under attack. It's being assaulted by the Time Empress, right? And so I was like, well, let's take the cathedral theme and let's make it a battle theme, right? So the Sanctum Under Siege is nothing more than the cathedral theme put into 7/8 time, turned into battle music, right? So like I said, for the Sanctum Under Siege for Crystalis, that was my way forward, right? I was like, let's take the cathedral music that we've already written and let's put it in 7/8 time and let's make it a battle theme. And then I have this sound library from East West called Voices of an Empire. And it has a lot of these really great solo female vocals. And I thought that would work here because it's like the mother, the capital M mother, right? Because I referred to the cathedral as the Cathedral of the Mothers, because in this game you have all the mother superiors. And so like, I thought this battle music features the voice of the capital M mother of the capital C cathedral that's like crying out in pain that her city is under attack, right? So we have this cathedral theme mixed with some choirs and this solo female voice to kind of represent that voice of anguish crying out, and the fact that the city is under siege, right? So this is the Sanctum Under Siege. So yeah, I knew this was going to be dungeon music, and so I didn't want it to be too aggressive, right? Because we're going to go from that into battle music, right, when you're fighting things, but I wanted it to have that sense of urgency, that sense of attack, right? And so I love putting things in 7/8, and so the piece, of course, adopted very well the 7/8. Bum 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 bum. Excuse me. Bum 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 bum. 1 and 2 and 1 2 3 1 and 2 and 1 2 3. I'm a percussionist, Jacery. That is my principal instrument. That's why all the battle themes sound like a concerto for drum set. That's why my battle themes sound like Dream Theater. I'm a drummer. 4-mallet marimba was my speciality. And so yeah, so that's how I came up with this piece, was by basically just trying to take the cathedral theme and put it into 7/8 and see where that got me, right? But aside from that, like I said, and then because it was a dungeon theme and I didn't want it to be all action all the time, I put in that mid section with the solo voice there and the more reduced section because it sounded a little bit more like a lament, right? It sounded a little bit sadder, but it also wasn't super aggressive, right? So it wasn't too grating on repeated listenings, right? It wasn't just action, 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 right? But yeah, there's really not much else to say about that one. I just thought that worked really well to kind of take the cathedral theme and turn it into battle music, right? By putting it into 7/8 time. From there, so if I talk about any of the pieces moving forward, there's a good chance that there might be some slight spoilers for the game. And so if you don't want to be spoiled, you might need to mute periodically here. I just want to let you know, like I said, I'm not going to try to be too spoilery here, but you've been warned. So when you come to Crystallis, you're coming to fight the Time Empress, right? Like, you know that the Time Empress is here. So yeah, you're coming here to fight the Time Empress, right? And that's alluded to very early in the storyline, that the Time Empress is coming to Crystallis. And so you have a battle with the Time Empress here, right? And so we have the Time Empress's battle theme, right? Now, just like all of the other battle themes, right? The Time Empress's battle theme is a riff on the Time Empress Waltz, right? So if we come back here and we listen to the Time Empress Waltz, and so this is the Time Empress's theme herself. And so that's about as much of it as we need to hear for now. And so with the Time Empress Waltz, I was naturally like, I was going for a kind of Kefka vibe, right? Something that sounded kind of playful, but also creepy, kind of like some sort of creepy fun house at a carnival, right? And so then for her battle theme, I tried to take that and I wanted to keep it at 120 beats per minute, right? Or 60 beats per minute, right? Because I wanted it to be in metronomic time with a clock, right? 60 beats a second. And so I wanted to keep it in metronomic time. Funny enough, I also tried to imbue this with a little bit of Sephiroth, right? This is in no way as good as One Winged Angel, right? But I was like, we're making a JRPG, we're honoring Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy with these games. Can I make a theme that like at least dips a toe in the direction of a One Winged Angel, right? But again, still using the thematic material that I established with the Time Empress Waltz, right? And there are a couple of other themes that pop up here in this fight that if I told you why they're there, they would be even more spoilery. So if you're smart enough to figure it out, you might spoil yourself. But if you're not paying too close attention, you may not. But this is otherwise the battle to defeat Destiny. And like I said, it's just riffing on the Time Empress theme and trying to sound like a One Winged Angel in the process. Okay, so after that first listen, so yeah, the hard reference, right, is this, right, which in context we all know as Sephiroth, but when I wrote the Time Empress Waltz, it's in E minor. One Winged Angel happens to also be in E minor at points, but I think the first time that you hear Sephiroth, it's actually in D minor. But my resolution is not the same. So like the chords that you hear in Sephiroth are not the same chords that I'm using here. It's just like for anybody that's a video game fan, for anybody that's a Final Fantasy fan, you hear those notes and like it's ingrained in our brain, right? How many times has somebody heard a choir saying Sephiroth, right? And so I was like, you can't own two notes, right? They're just two notes. It's not the same chord progression. It's not the same resolution, right? It borrows nothing else from the piece, right? It's just those two notes, but it's enough that like your brain tricks you, right? And then there's also a moment right before the big blow up at the end, right before the last big section, where you actually hear Cris Bell's theme and then a response of the Time Empress theme again, right? You hear in this little quiet moment before the breakdown, it's like this little conversation between Cris Bell and the Time Empress here. Yeah, right here. So yeah, there is that little motivic conversation between Cris and the Time Empress, right? A little known fact, the second composer wrote that he grew knee-length gray hair and a long sword popped out of nowhere. And then over this final climax section, the electric guitar is actually wailing out on Cris Bell's theme. It's like this cry for help on top of all of the other chaos that's going on. And then you'll hear after Cris Bell's like cry out that the guitar goes to a distorted response from the Time Empress theme. And so it's like this call and response in this final section between Cris Bell's theme being responded to with the Time Empress's theme. Cris Bell, Time Empress. Cris Bell, Time Empress. And then there's this part here where in this A section, we have this right kind of figure that's all in E minor. And then one time when that E, B, E motif plays, it's harmonized on C. It's harmonized in the major, as if to say that like, no, there's still good in you. Like you don't have to be bad, right? So there's this moment in the A section where you hear that motif harmonized over C, and then you get the most like twisted, deformed response of all of the variations after it, right? So this is in E. And then right here. So after we get that call, that version of it in C, then you get like those really high half-step dissonant strings, right? Like that very manic, like, you know, look up, I tried to be good for a second and it almost killed me, right? And then, you know, we're in that triplet time. And that's the other thing about that hard reference, right? Is that we're in that triplet time. And then is an eighth note melody completely out of nowhere that pulls you in to the subdivision of the next section, right? Which goes into an eighth note feel as opposed to a triplet feel. So yeah, that is the Battle to Defeat Destiny. And then after you After you have that battle, you actually gain the ability to control the dragon that the Time Empress used to take to Crystallis. And so this brings us to our third overworld theme, right? And so again, this is doing the same thing that the first two overworld themes did. It's that same kind of stepwise motion in the bass, right? That same sort of rhythmic value. But before we listen to this, I actually want to listen to The Dragon's Awakening, which is a cutscene. The way that the soundtrack is formatted is all the cutscenes come at the bottom half of the soundtrack. All of the looped stuff is the first half of the soundtrack, right? So if we come down here to The Dragon's Awakening, we're gonna hear in the action part, you're gonna hear the same melodic material in The Dragon's Awakening that we hear in The Dragon Rider, right? So let's listen to this. This is a cutscene for the game, so we'll skip down a second. Yo, what's up, Otis? Thank you for the kind words. Yes, I'm pretty happy with the reception. So that cutscene, the music that we just listened to right there, that was a piece where it had been animated to temp music, right? There was already a piece of music that they had used to, handle all of the cuts. And so the piece that I wrote there very much follows the formatting. So the quiet part that I have, there was a quiet part at the start. It got to the loud part at the same time, But the nice thing was that the temp music that they used actually used a similar chord progression to what I had been doing with the overworld music. And so I ended up writing an overworld theme for the dragon where it's doing that same baseline movement, but then it's using the Time Empress theme for the dragon's theme, right? Yo, what's up, Dr. Beardsley? And so since, we associated the dragon with the Time Empress, I kind of came up with this amalgamation that was taking what I had done for the dragon cutscene and making a little overworld theme out of it that borrowed from it. The difference here is that the B section of the Dragon Rider goes into a 3/4 time. And it feels like the moment where the A theme kind of feels like Chris Bell is stumbling to try and control the dragon. The B theme is her having successfully controlled the dragon, and she's broke up above the cloud line and is having her little moment above the clouds in riding the dragon. And so that's how I kind of structured this Dragon Rider piece, where the first half is her trying to get the hang of it, and then the second half is her having succeeded in it. And so there's a little back and forth between some Chris Bell themes and some Time Empress themes, which are representing the dragon here in conjunction with the bass line. And so that's how we got the Dragon Rider theme, our third and final overworld theme for the game. So now we're back into that 4/4 time with that ascending bass line, just like all the other overworld themes. The same run up of the piano. And then this is the above the clouds moment. And then that final cadence at the end is the flat 2-5-1 cadence, which I mentioned in the previous stream. I used as a Time Empress cadence, the flat 2 to 5 to 1. And so we have that same motion at the tail end of this piece. But we have that ba-da-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-dum, bum, 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 ba-da-da-dum, ba-dum is a little variation on Cris Bell's theme, but just put into 6/8 time. I do love cello. As far as like solo instruments go, if I had to pick a woodwind instrument, it would be, or if I had to pick a string instrument, it would be cello. If I had to pick a woodwind instrument, it would be the oboe or the English horn. And if I had to pick a brass instrument, it would probably be the French horn, right? Yo, what's up, Trom? Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. If you're saying the music is as sexy as I am, I feel like that's a dig on the music, but I think you're saying it complimentary. So I appreciate that, buddy. So yeah, that's how we arrived at the Dragon Rider. Like I said, and I think if you listen to all three overworld pieces back to back to back, you would hear a lot of those similarities, right? How I kind of structured all of those pieces the same way. And so that gets us to the third and final of our core battle themes, right? And so as I mentioned previously, I wrote my little trilogy, right? And so when I was thinking about the third battle theme, I was like, what can I do different, right? I already took the battle theme and I put it in halftime. What else could I do different with it? And that's where I came up with the idea of a really fast triplet groove, right? And I took that same notion from the other two battle themes where the first battle theme starts on E. The second battle theme starts on G. And then the third one starts on the B. And then immediately goes to that sharp 4, right? And so I put it in the triplet time. And then I came up with this really crazy offbeat syncopation that I just loved, that I kind of like stumbled upon. And then I abused the hell out of it in the piece. And so my thought process here with this is that the piece starts out and you're almost immediately taken to the floor. Like within the first 25, 30 seconds of the tune, your ass is on the floor, right? You have been beaten down by the battle theme. And then the next chunk of music, I kind of interpreted as like an unconscious dream. Like you've been knocked out and now you're hearing like this kind of more dreamy kind of music for a second because you're dazed. And then the electric guitar comes in and plays this. Except it's in a minor key. And it plays the Narim theme. And so you're going to hear about 40 seconds in, you're going to hear this wail out of the electric guitar, which is referencing the Narim theme, which is again, that homesickness, that longing theme that I was trying to emulate here. And so like you are immediately beaten down by the music, you're dazed. And then this desire for home, this desire for security comes powering through the mix, and it like reinvigorates the listener. And then suddenly like the double bass drum comes in and it gets heavy again and it picks back up. And it's like you battling back against that, you know, against that, that really heavy hit that you just took. Right. And then from there, the other battle themes actually battle each other. So you're going to hear the third battle theme get played out, the theme get played out in the electric guitar, and then the first battle theme responds to it, and then the third battle theme plays, and then the second battle theme responds to it with the and so like there's a second section of this piece where it's literally the third battle theme doing battle against the other two battle themes, and then the final section of the piece is the secondary theme from the initial battle theme reinterpreted, right? And so that's kind of how I structured this piece. I wrote this piece in very little time. Like I said, we wrote 2 additional battle themes for the game relatively late in the game's development. And so I would say this Battle Against Time, I probably wrote this piece inside of a week. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. I wanted to play it for you guys numerous times on stream, but I'm like, I don't want to tip the cap just yet. I want to wait until the game comes out before I drop the additional battle themes. And so I'm really happy with how this turned out. I'm happy with the energy of it. I'm happy with the crazy syncopations I put into it, the references to the other battle themes, right? It really is the cap on the battle theme trilogy, right? So here it is. So it was a battle against time to finish it. Exactly, Major Marvelous. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, wait, let me get the screen pulled up. There we go. That's just from the Ruins. That's a late game battle sequence. Here we go. So yeah, that little moment right there, that that little end of phrase syncopation, I love that. I use that all over in the place. And then you have those offbeats, those offbeat hits against the triplet time. Yo, what's up, Red Ink? And then you can hear it, right, where it gets quiet, and then you hear the ba-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's my little callback to the Narim theme, right? And like when I think about it in the context, it gives me a little bit of goosebumps. I really just dig it. And then, like I said, you can hear the bum ba 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 bum 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 ba 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 bum 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 in the third battle theme. And then with the dun 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 da 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 da, the first battle theme response, and then you get the even more aggressive third battle theme, you know, and just like slams you into the ground with submission, and then it gets quiet, and then you hear the dun 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 of the second battle theme like calling back, right? And so it's this super freaking meta. There's so much meta going on in this third battle theme where it's just like battling against the other battle themes, right? And I just loved how all of that worked out. So here we've been knocked out. We're knocked out, and then we come screaming back. We're knocked out again, but then here comes the second battle theme. Answering back. And then this little melody here is the B theme, the hero's theme of the first battle theme. So yeah, that was my battle theme trilogy. And then that gets us to endgame stuff, where we learn throughout the course of the game that there are ancient ruins underneath all of the cities that we visited. And that there was, you kind of like think about it like Super Metroid with the Chozo, right? There was like this ancient civilization that has been forgotten about in the world of Cris Tales. And so we discovered these ruins, and so we needed a theme for the ruins, but then you visit several different ruins. You visit the Ruins of Narim, the Ruins of St. Clarity, the Ruins of Tulira, and the Ruins of Cinder, right? And so and this was again where like I got a little bit too meta for my own good. I don't know if in the end that I love the pieces as much as I love some of the other pieces on the soundtrack, but what I did was I created a basic premise for a ruins theme, which is just this half-step motion, right? Just this low, and then I put an augmented chord underneath it. Oops. So started off with this this augmented move up. And so I had that basic idea. Well, yes, it Jaws, right? Dr. Beardsley, that half-step motion. Well, here's the good news, Glorious Rainbow. Give me a second. So that was the basic foundation that I had. I had talked with the team about the music for this area, and we both had the agreement that like it should be something that sounds kind of artificial and techy, kind of creepy and mysterious, but like not too creepy and mysterious. And so I had this idea of the half-step movement and then the augmented triad, right? And what I did was I wrote 4 different versions of the same piece where it's basically like the Narim equivalent of Saint Clair, or the Narim equivalent of the ruins, the Saint Clarity equivalent of the ruins, the Tulira equivalent, and the Cinder equivalent, right? Where each piece follows that same half-step motion, but then has overlay that same half-step motion, that same use of the augmented triad, but with then the motifs from the other towns laid on top of them. And so I tried to essentially retrofit all of these themes that I had written for Clarity, Tulira, and Cinder, and then including the main theme from Narim, right? And to try and retrofit that idea to this half-step motion, to this augmented triad, right? And it took a lot of fussing to get everything to work within that construct. And then I also changed up the orchestration. So the Saint Clarity version uses instruments from Clarity. The Tulira version uses instruments from Tulira, and so forth, right? And so each piece is set up as the first half of the piece is like the ruins version of Clarity, the ruins version of Cinder, right? And then the B side is like what the ruins grew into, right? The ruins of Narim grew into Narim town. The ruins of Cinder grew into the Cinder town, right? So the B section is like this little fanfare of that town that grew out of the kind of creepy alien sound of the first half of the piece, right? And I think this will maybe make sense once I play it. So I wrote a version for each of the 4 areas that was done with the intention that it sounds the same and yet different, right? But then there were a couple of other spots in the game where the ruins showed up, and I was like, we need like a ruins piece that doesn't have any of the other influences from the other towns, so that we have just like a standard ruins theme, right? And so that's what this first piece is. And so we listen to the revealed ruins, and you'll get an idea for the soundscape that I was looking to paint with, and then you'll hear how we deviated from that for each of the 4 different areas, right? So this is the revealed ruins. And so that's it, just right at a minute, right? And so that gives you the basic foundation, right? That I was working with, right? A more atmospheric music, less melody driven, more just kind of creepy tones, right? There's little melodies creeping out here and there. Right? And now, and we won't listen through these ones because, like I said, we can listen to each one of these once. But now you'll hear how each of these next 4 pieces starts out with the Narim, the town's version of the Narim theme, or the town's version of the Reina theme, the ruins, and then the second section is just a fanfare that is that town's theme put into ruins. A ruins format, right? And so we'll listen to this one, and I think you'll get it. Actually, while this one's playing out, I need to use the restroom, and I'm gonna have to use the restroom before we break for Jackbox anyways. So I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna step away for a second, and then, you know, when I get back, we'll move on to the next piece. So here we are, the Ruins of Narim. So you could hear how there it grew into that ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? That's that main Narim theme, but it's in a minor. And so yeah, so we had some instruments from Narim. We had the theming from Narim, right? And the other neat thing that I did was that I took each of these 4 pieces and I moved them along a diminished chord, right? So Narim is in E flat, starts out in E flat. Saint Clarity starts out in F sharp. Cinder or Tulira starts out in A, and Cinder starts out in C. And so they go around a diminished chord. I might have misassigned those, but each one is either E flat, F sharp, A, or C. So they all start with a different tonic, but they all use that same material. And so like now we're going to hear Clarity. You're going to hear some marimba in there. You're going to hear the Clarity theme right over the top of this. And then we're going to hear a flourish at the end that is the representation of Saint Clarity, right? These are the ruins. That's Narim, and then this is Clarity. And so there we go. So there's Clarity's version of it, right? And then we have the Tulira version. talking on mute. Loot Everybody has 2 gift subs at a time every time he's popped in this channel. Gotten up to 143 gifted subs in this channel. Loot Everybody, you're a madman. Thank you so much, buddy. So yeah, here, let me get back to the little flourish there. We got a minor interruption. That's okay. So here we are, the flourish of Tulira here. So yeah, there's the Tulira version where you hear the solo violin. There's the trumpets, you know, the bump. Anyways, you hear the Tulira themes in there, and so like each one of these pieces is like the Reina, or the Ruins piece is like the seedling, and then that flourish at the end is like the plant that it grows into, right? So like I said, I got a little meta there. I don't know if it worked in execution as well as it worked in concept. But then here is the final piece, the Ruins for Cinder. Like I said, we wanted something that they all kind of sounded the same so that you knew that they were the same area, but that they represented the different other areas of the game that you went to, right? And so there's the version with Cinder, right? You got the little jazzy lick at the end, right? And so, yeah, so like I said, I kind of bit off a bit more thematically than I could chew, because at the time that I was writing the themes for the various kingdoms, I wasn't thinking of them all coalescing under a similar banner. And I introduced this half-step motion. And so like trying to get the voicings and everything to work, trying to keep that bass line the same with that just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Trying to keep that notion and have it work across all 4 areas ended up being quite daunting and quite frustrating at times. But it turned out okay. I think it achieved the goal that I was setting out for. I don't know if the execution is the greatest, but that leads us into the final battle music for the game, which is the battle that you fight in these ruins, which all of the ruins music is at 92 beats per minute, and then the battle music here is at 184 beats per minute. So it is double the speed, so that when you hear these low wails in the low brass, it's being played at exactly the same speed as the other ruins music. So the foundation of the harmony is at the exact same speed as the ruins music. It's just double time on top of it, right? So here we have the final battle music, which I'm not gonna spoil or anything. So here's just an entrance to it, right? So yeah, so that got us to this final battle music where I threw everything I had at the piece, But like I said, when you listen to that bass line, you'll hear that the bass line is still doing the exact same thing that it was doing in these other Ruins pieces, just as battle music, right? And so there are references to Cris Bell's theme in here. There are references to the other battle themes. There are references to the cathedral music, to the magic theme, right? It's everything was thrown at this one. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, all things being all things being said. And so yeah, here is our final bit of battle music, the last battle of the game. And so yeah, and that's where we're looping back, right? So yes, loot everybody. I like to be able to write like I started out as a teenager thinking that I wanted to write music for soundtracks, and while I still think it would be fun to score a movie, there's something unique that video games lets you do, in that it lets you sort of compose in uninterrupted seconds, right? I don't really have to worry about dialogue popping in, right? I can just write 90 seconds of music or 2 minutes of music. And so, yes, I laid heavily on themes and motifs in this soundtrack, because it also helps you write music quicker, right? If I have a motif that I wrote that makes sense in a piece, then, why not use it, right? And so I knew that this final battle was taking place in these ruins. And so I was like, let's use the thematic material that I made for the ruins, right? Which, like I said, was this half step motion in the bass combined with these augmented chords. And so that idea persists throughout that battle music. There's frequent use of augmented chords and frequent half step motion. And then even when the piece modulates, it modulates up a minor third, but then it goes right to the... it's always maintaining that half step up, half step down movement. And I had said before that I had kind of used the electric guitar to represent Cris Bell's willingness to battle. And that's why it's so much more sprightly and energetic to begin. And then as the battle themes go on, the guitar gets a little bit more frenzied and a little bit less reliable and a little bit less constant, to the point where if you notice that final battle theme there has no electric guitar in it whatsoever, because her enthusiasm for battle is just completely gone. there is just the obstacle in front of her. There is just the end game, right? So there was a little creative decision making there in that as well. And that it's a battle theme that you've noticed there's no electric guitar in that final battle theme. But I still think it slaps, right? I think it still hits the notes. It's agitato all over the place. You know, it's manic, it's crazy. It's referencing other themes, right? You hear little moments where everything dips away and you hear a statement of Cris Bell's theme or a statement of the cathedral theme, you know? So yeah, that was my final frenzied battle music. And then that takes us to credits music, which originally in the credits, they were using the cathedral theme because the team at Dreams Incorporated, they loved the cathedral music that I wrote and they had it in the credits. And I was like, you know, we need at least a little something, right? We need like a final statement of Cris Bell's theme to be like, this is the resolution, right? We need a little release. And so what I did was, this was a piece that I wish I could have worked on longer. I wish I could have written a little bit more music for it. It only ended up being about a minute long. But we just didn't have time. I didn't have time to work on it any more than I did. And so this is like a final statement of Cris Bell's theme, and it's melancholy and it's sweet. And for as short as it is, it gives me the feels. It gives me goosebumps. I really like how it turned out. And then it transitions into the cathedral theme from there. So you hear the initial credits fanfare, and then the cathedral music just loops throughout the duration of the credits. And so you'll hear once we get past the main theme that it just goes into the cathedral music and fades out, because I figured I didn't need to give you all the loops of the cathedral music. It's already on the soundtrack up above. And so here is, and I worked on this a little bit on stream as well, but here is my final little statement of Cris Bell's theme to kind of close things out. And I think it worked pretty well. And so, yeah, that's it. But that little moment, like, it gets me. I really, for as simple as this piece is, I really like how it turned out. And then as quick as it's there, it's gone, right? So yeah, there's, we could talk through some of these other pieces as well. I can kind of mention them very briefly here. Yeah, the turnaround. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, it was a really nice little bit of orchestration that I had there. So we can kind of quickly talk through a couple of these. This, because I want to, like, maybe in 10 minutes or so, get into Jackbox so we don't get too late. This is just music that I wrote for defeat music, for, if you die, right, and you get reset. It's just a statement of Cris Bell's theme, but it actually ends on a Picardy third. which I think has a sort of haunting quality to it. You also love how it does a good job of being simple and beautiful. It starts to swell, then it has resolution. Yeah, like it peaks for this little moment in time, right? Yeah, I thought a Picardy third on Death Screen. That seemed, I tried ending it on the minor and it just didn't sound right. It actually sounded sadder to end it on the major. And this was just me channeling a whole bunch of extended chord harmonies to make something that sounded like going to sleep music. And I think this sounds pretty bang on for like it's time to go to sleep. Wait, why did you? It's not remembering all of the other images that I have in there for some reason. Weird. So I felt like this is pretty good go to sleep music. So, you know, just a little jingle for any time you used the tent or slept at the inn. This is using the background plate from the forest theme, but then we hear an interjection of crotales and a metallic metally percussion, and it's Cris Bell's theme again, but just with some really gross harmonies, right? Some very non-functional harmonies when the crystal breaks. Yo, what's up, Shrees? I'm glad you remember my Picardy third reference. So yeah, that was just a cutscene where, like I said, little bit of use of the forest theme, and then Cris Bell's theme for that bum 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 bum. It's just a really crazy harmonization of Cris Bell's theme. There were a couple of cutscenes where Cris Bell had nightmares, and they already had some temp music for those. And so I kind of followed along with that vein. That's why there's the heavy percussion and kind of distorted electronica sounds. And then you'll hear Cris Bell's theme here. You'll hear the Time Empress theme here. Cris Bell's theme. A little bit more. Cris Bell's theme. Fully realized. Time Empress theme. Oh, actually, that's the Dies Irae. Time Empress. And then a variation on it for another dream sequence later in the game. Mostly the same material. It just don't go on without me. Most of the same material. It just had a slightly different cut to it, so I had to edit it together slightly different. When your motivic writing is so meta, you include a ubiquitous Gregorian chant. Yeah, there's a little bit of the Dies Irae in there. The General's Resignation is a piece, one of the very first cutscene pieces that I wrote for the cutscene that happens after you defeat Enzo with the very first appearance of the Time Empress. And then I had several of these kind of cataclysm like the Catastrophe Question, the Catastrophe Confirmed, the Deception Unveiled. Several of these, which are just kind of variations on the same material. I kind of created a catastrophe motif that got used for these cutscenes, but really nothing too spectacular here. Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's important for me because if I write a motif, if I write a theme for a character and you don't realize it's a character's theme and it doesn't resonate with you, then it doesn't have context for you the next time that you hear it, right? And so I like to think it's one of those things that even if you're not paying close attention, there's some kind of response that you get that tells you that you recognize that theme and that you've heard it before, even if it's not conscious, right? And so some of these other pieces, it's pretty spoilery. Yeah, I did change the voice at some point. Because I can't really talk about some of these others without being overtly spoilerish. Because some of them have to do with endgame content, right? And so the last thing I'll talk about, and then I think we'll go ahead and get transition. I think we'll put a cap on this, right? Because like I said, some of these I can't really go into detail without just offering mega spoilers. But I will say this: back when I told you that at the very beginning of the project, I wrote a theme for the Town of Narim that we didn't end up using. We ended up using it for a cutscene for one of the endings. There are several endings to the game, and there are several endings to the game, and for two of the endings, we ended up using the town music that I wrote. I just had to re-edit it to fit the length of the video, right? So this is the last piece I'll play for you. You'd love to talk about this for many days. No, I appreciate that. Like I said, I mean, I think there are some people in here that don't care about story beats. And like I said, some of these pieces are only like 10, 20 seconds long. Okay, we'll talk about this one. I really like this one. It uses a reference of Wilhelm's theme, and it also uses a reference of the battle theme, and I really just like how it came out. So you'll hear kind of some sparkly Shala's theme kind of business going, and then you'll hear a statement of Wilhelm's theme followed by a statement of the battle theme, and I think this worked out pretty well. Wilhelm's theme. And then those bells in the background, that ba-da-da-dum, bum, 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 is the battle theme. And so now here's the last piece that I'll play. These two pieces are pretty similar. This one's just the longer version of it. So this is the town music that I wrote for Narim originally, repurposed for credits music. And so that piece of music that I wrote, 2.5 years ago that we didn't end up using, we found a spot for it. It made it in the credits. It made it in a cutscene, and here it is. So yeah, obviously parts of that were adjusted to fit cuts. And so like there are some parts where like it gets a little sadder or a little bit more introspective. Those are to match, you know, some of the images that you're seeing on screen. But that very first bit of the theme that you hear, that bum ba dum ba da 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 da, that was the town theme that I had originally written, that we repurposed. And so yeah, that is the soundtrack to Cris Tales. And so yeah, I think that's, I mean, without having like everything here in front of me to point out every possible instance of every theme or motif, you know, like that's about as much as I could go into it without just having all of the sheet music here in front of me. But yeah, it was a hell of a ride. It was a lot of fun. I think it did a good job of kind of demonstrating the things that I was capable of doing. Oh yes, thank you guys. Thank you for the applause. Thank you. And so yeah, yeah, I mean, there we go. So yeah. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for asking questions, you know.